With so many passionate LEGO fans, there are bound to be a few disagreements. Today, I'll be discussing some of the craziest hot takes on LEGO that I've read online from fans across the world. They get crazy, so let's get into it. Starting things off, I received a comment that's been keeping me up all night. The sheer thought of the horror that Plague Dr. James wants to unleash is truly frightening. You see, this supervillain in training thinks that LEGO should abandon all of its existing themes, like Star Wars, Ninjago, Technic, and City, and bring back the one LEGO theme that we've all spent the last 20 years trying to forget, Galidor. For anyone who might not know, or for anyone lucky enough to have forgotten, Galidor was a massive flop of a line released back in 2002 that focused on the adventures of a pair of teenagers, Nick Bluetooth and Allegra Zane, as they struggled to save the outer dimensions from the evil Gorm. This was much more than just a LEGO line though, because they released 2 seasons of an equally questionable TV show at the same time. LEGO even partnered with McDonald's to release a series of promotional figures for the theme. I've talked about this a few times, so I won't go into too much detail, but if you haven't noticed, these toys are very non-LEGO looking. Many elements used in this theme don't match up with any other LEGO pieces, meaning that much of Galidor was pretty much incompatible with any LEGO you already owned. Needless to say, the line and the TV show were complete failures despite being a good market test for LEGO at the time. Galidor's legacy is one of great experimentation, but I'll be honest, I don't want these sets ever to come back. If you have any Galidor sets, let me know in the comments if you think the theme should be revived. Now, although Galidor might have been doomed from the beginning, it came out during a period of pretty significant changes at LEGO. Throughout the mid to late 1990s, the company had been struggling financially and was desperate to get back on its feet. Bolstered by the massive success of the then new Star Wars sets, LEGO entered something of a renaissance at the turn of the 21st century. A user named BigMan86 seems to think that this was a real sweet spot for LEGO, saying that LEGO sets from today pale in comparison to those released 20 years ago. And while I do see his point, LEGO does release an astonishing array of sets nowadays, such as the NASA Apollo 11 lunar lander and the Starry Night sets, or giant sets such as the Ninjago City Markets, Lion Knight's Castle, and the Avengers Tower sets. But despite all of this, it's impossible to deny that in the early 2000s, LEGO brought us some pretty major highlights within their catalog. For one, we got the first LEGO Harry Potter sets in 2001. These came hot off the success of Star Wars and proved that licensed sets could sell just as well, if not better, than anything that LEGO could put out. However, the rest of the LEGO set launches from this era were a bit more original. The year 2000 saw the release of Dino Island, the third sub-theme in the Adventure series. A few years later, in 2003, LEGO released the last sub-theme featuring Johnny Thunder with the Orient Express line. This line was quite popular among fans, and in 2003 we got what might be my personal favorite line from the era, LEGO Discovery. These sets were all focused on real-world spaceships like the Saturn V moon mission, the Mars Exploration rover, and even the International Space Station. Pretty cool. However, the longest lasting legacy from these turn-of-the-century sets has got to be Bionicle. These sets managed to take off in popularity despite having some of the same potential issues as Galidor. The Bionicle sets didn't really look like anything that LEGO had ever put out before and used several unique parts that didn't necessarily fit with more standard LEGO bricks. However, while Galidor's figures were abominations, Bionicle figures were generally loved by fans, and the Bionicle storyline was very strong. But as per usual, not everyone agrees with this. One of the hottest takes that I got was from Aiden the Carrot, who just flat out said that Bionicle was by far the worst LEGO line ever released. While they don't go into any specific details about their specific grievances, they do lay out 2 more hot takes that provide a little bit of context. Much like BigMan86, Aiden thinks that today's LEGO sets are a bit underwhelming and were better in the past. However, this viewer moves the golden age back even further. According to Aiden, the best time for LEGO was between 1989 and 1997, with LEGO Pirates being the very best theme of all time. The quote, best years of LEGO is quite subjective for everyone, as it is rooted in childhood nostalgia for the most part. For example, I absolutely love the years of the LEGO Space Police 3 line, as well as Power Miners and the early Ninjago Spinners, as these themes introduced me to LEGO as a young kid. But in regards to the range of 1989 to 1997, the late 90s weren't a great time for LEGO, as a company financially, and that has to do with several decisions that they made throughout that decade. While the specific details are perhaps a topic for another video, the short version is this. As electronic toys became cheaper and more appealing for consumers, LEGO was struggling to stand out on store shelves. As a result, they began experimenting with all kinds of wild new sets. Some of these experiments would prove to be massive successes. LEGO Pirates set sail in 1989 and ushered some impressive builds that are still prized by collectors today. Several fan-favorite themes came out in the 90s, such as Rock Raiders, Adventurers, M-Tron, Ice Planet, Aquazone, and much more. Some themes, though, were relegated to obscurity. Sadly, the wildly unique LEGO Time Cruisers theme only lasted 2 years with 9 sets total and is rarely ever talked about to this day. The issue that some of these themes caused LEGO, though, had nothing to do with just how cool or not cool they were. In fact, these sets' uniqueness is what ultimately caused a lot of problems for LEGO as a company. Back in the 90s, almost every LEGO set had some sort of large, specially molded pieces that were only used in 1 or 2 sets. For example, the Imperial Clipper from 1992 came with this whole piece that has only ever appeared in 1 other set. Likewise, these giant translucent orange quarter domes were only ever released in a single set. However, they did come out in 7 more in different colors over the next few years. However, the point is that this approach led to pretty massive losses for the company at the start, as the design and manufacture of new molds is incredibly expensive, and making one for a single line or even just a single set simply was not sustainable in the long run. In a similar vein, there's this comment from a fan named Steven who argues that the only good Star Wars sets are from the original trilogy and the prequels. I mean, in a way, he might be right, as these films have had more than 20 years of LEGO releases, while the newer movies have had less than 10, but regardless of your thoughts on these movies, there have been some great sets based on them. Poe's X-Wing Fighter is a great spin on the classic set, as well as the 2017 Millennium Falcon. Sure, these are just new versions of older ships, but BB-8 is a great display set. Now, while many fans might argue about what the best era for LEGO was, I got one viewer who managed to narrow it down even more. This viewer flat out said that the only LEGO sets that they care about are the Sonic the Hedgehog sets. I mean, these are certainly cool sets. The Green Hill Zone is an amazing build, but more specifically, this comment actually highlights something really unique about LEGO. With so many licensed sets out there these days, there really is a LEGO set for everyone. Even if you've never built anything before, getting a set based around your favorite game or movie or IP is always a great gift. Up next is a very hot take from a viewer going by the name Is the Pizza for You and Me? And I won't lie, I took this one a bit personally. This poor, misguided soul claims that Lizaroo is cooler than Spitta, which is ridiculous. Whether or not this is a joke comment or actually this viewer's true feelings, obviously I don't agree with this hot take. Out of respect, I have to give Lizaroo kudos for being a fellow Venomari tribe member, but he can't stand up to my man Spitta. Spit's got 2 massive snake fangs, a super cool cobra-shaped head, 2 eyes on each side, and a much better front view than Lizaroo. Get Lizaroo some braces to deal with those crooked fangs, and then we'll revisit this conversation. Now, this next LEGO hot take might divide some of you, but first, please quickly go tap that subscribe button if you enjoy my videos. I really appreciate the support. Alright, so when it comes to personal preference, it's pretty hard to argue that something is objectively better or worse than something else, especially when the 2 things in consideration have very little in common. But that didn't stop one of my fans from making a pretty apples to oranges comparison when they stated that Marvel is better than LEGO City. I mean, recent Marvel sets have been absolutely incredible, while City seems to be struggling lately, albeit with a few hidden gems like the 2024 Prison Island set and the brand new Space line, which is really cool. You may have noticed that LEGO City is a bit cyclical in nature. The theme certainly has years of splendor, while other years feel a bit lazy as LEGO recycles concepts that have been popular in the past. From a business perspective, this strategy works great for LEGO. Certain things such as hospitals and fire trucks will always sell well. The issue is that it's a bit hard to compare Marvel to City, as these 2 themes have very little in common aside from some of the much larger buildings. But even the largest modulars like the Jazz Club or Natural History Museum aren't technically released under the City theme. What do you think? Which side are you on, Marvel or City? Now, in my first ever LEGO Hot Takes video, I jokingly mentioned how much I enjoy munching on the delicious and chocolatey brittle brown bricks, and it seems like I'm not the only one. A fan going by Shiny has a unique way of dealing with spare parts, stating that they're meant to be eaten. I can't lie, a handful of colorful plastic snacks is tempting, but you have to resist that temptation. Another user named EMST takes it a bit further, claiming that the blue ones taste better than the red ones. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend testing this theory yourself. I'm personally just gonna believe this as a fact, as I don't plan on eating them anytime soon to find out. Now, moving on, we all know the risks of not cleaning up after building. Not only can you lose some valuable pieces, but you might also cause severe bodily harm. If you ask anyone who's been around LEGO long enough, they'll tell you just how dangerous these little plastic bricks can be. While a spare LEGO brick sitting on a table is no worry to anyone, an unseen piece sitting on the floor at night is essentially a landmine waiting to ruin your night. That is, of course, unless you're Jason here, who seemingly has feet made out of pure steel and claims that stepping on a LEGO brick doesn't hurt at all. Well, Jason, how about you try out one of these LEGO pieces next, and have fun, I guess. Up next is perhaps the coldest hot take in today's video, which came from a fan going by Austin, who claims that Edna Mode from The Incredibles is the most cursed minifigure head out there. Honestly, I'm kinda tempted to agree here. There's just something about that smile combined with those giant eyes that makes me feel a little uneasy. Her updated minifigure is a bit better at least. But what about when it comes to building sets? What kinds of controversial opinions do fans have? Well, one of my favorite hot takes came from Rose Thorne, who claims that the real fun of LEGO is sorting them, storing them, and collecting rare pieces. I won't lie, the inner collector in me wants to agree with this. Truth be told, most of my LEGO is pretty well organized, and I do buy LEGO sets for the parts and minifigures from time to time. However, I do like displaying fully built sets, but at the end of the day, you can do whatever you want with your collection of colorful plastic bricks. Now, another building opinion came in from Cap VR, who seems to have a rather unique way of building LEGO. This individual doesn't look at the blue box that tells you which parts you need. Instead, this individual just plays a game of spot the difference between each instruction step. For most sets these days, that's probably not too much of an issue, as there aren't many pieces added in each step. But if this style of building gives you anxiety, you might want to consider that this is just how every set used to be. Just look at these old castle instructions for a peek into the past, where all instructions were entirely spot the difference, with many bricks added in each step. And then there are also hot takes regarding the actual sale practices of LEGO. One of my viewers apparently isn't a fan of LEGO gifts with purchase, but that doesn't really explain why. If I had to guess though, their issue might be with just how hard it is to get some of these and how much money you inevitably have to drop. As a recent example, the new Dungeons & Dragons Red Dragon's Tail set is an absolute masterpiece, and if you buy it directly from LEGO, you can get the equally awesome Mimic dice box. Sadly, the only way to get this particular gift is to purchase the $360 full D&D set or pick it up from a scalper. This isn't the first time that LEGO has done this, and it won't be the last, but it's always upsetting to have an amazing build locked behind such a high price tag. Another issue with LEGO's store, as pointed out by NPW007, is that they retire sets too quickly. Most sets only last a couple years, although some of the most popular, primarily large sets, last much longer. For example, the UCS Millennium Falcon has been on sale since 2017, and the Disney Castle was on sale for 6 years until its retirement at the end of 2022. This user commented that they refuse to build sets by bag number. Instead, they dump out all the bags at once and build from a single massive pile. Now, for a small set of 2 or 3 bags, this might be fine if you've got the space, time, and the patience, but some people take this to the extreme. Another fan, Georgine on Reddit, was considering dumping out all 15 plus bags of one of the LEGO Friends sets to, quote, make the build last longer. And while that's a noble endeavor, the idea of having to dig through 15 bags worth of pieces just to find a single tiny LEGO brick fills me with dread. I think at this point though, the majority of LEGO fans can agree that there are just too many stickers in some LEGO sets. But apparently this sentiment isn't shared by everyone. A fan going by the name Chewbacca gave their own hot take when they commented that they actually really enjoy placing stickers. Now, if I'm being honest, I do kind of understand this viewpoint. Sticker books are totally a thing for both kids and adults, and I absolutely understand the zen focus that could come with that. But for me personally, anything more than a few stickers, especially in larger or more expensive sets, is just a letdown. But hypothetically, let's say that you've been buying all of the biggest sets for a few years. What do you do when you inevitably run out of space? No matter how large your LEGO shelf, room, or even museum might be, it will fill up eventually, and then you'll need to make some very difficult decisions about what to do next. Well, a user named TabbyCat over on Reddit has one idea that's certainly a little controversial. Apparently, when they run out of space, this user takes the set apart brick by brick, following the instructions in reverse order, and rebagging everything before putting it back into the box for storage. I have to admit, this is certainly a lot more effort than I've ever put into breaking down a LEGO set. But this raises another common argument amongst LEGO fans. What do you do with your boxes? Many builders will save them, especially for larger or pricier sets. This is partly about collecting, but also partly about maintaining the resale value of the set, because LEGO sets have been known to appreciate in value, and many collectors will pay top dollar for even a used set as long as it's complete with box and instructions. A user going by the name BatVisual puts his hot take plainly: boxes should go in the bin. If I'm being honest, I have to agree with him overall. It's hard enough to find space to display your new LEGO sets, let alone finding a space for the box. That's nearly impossible. I'd say keep your favorites, but chuck the rest. Speaking of buying LEGO sets though, a Reddit user named TryNitroBulb said something that we've all likely thought of at one point. LEGO is releasing too many sets that cost more than $100. This is a pretty common gripe amongst a lot of fans, with more and more of the year's best sets, such as the UCS Razor Crest, the Eiffel Tower, and the Lord of the Rings Rivendell sets costing more than $500 a piece, which is crazy. It's getting more and more expensive to get all the sets you might want, but the price of LEGO sets is actually incredibly complicated. To see how the prices may have changed, I found some interesting data from 2008 through 2017, and it tells an interesting story. Over that decade, not only did LEGO start releasing more sets every year, but also the size of these sets also increased. Larger sets equate to larger price tags, so maybe that explains partially why it seems like LEGO releases an abundance of expensive sets these days. Not to mention LEGO's massive expansion into the adult collector market with a range of large sets for ages 18+. This has actually been LEGO's primary focus for expansion in recent years. However, this all ties into another issue. Some people argue that LEGO sets are actually getting too good. And what does that mean? Well, let's say that you just spent $650 on the LEGO Titanic set, and then spent another 25 hours putting it together. How willing are you going to be able to take that set apart, or use the bricks from it in your own builds? I know that there are many sets on my shelf that I would never dream of disassembling because I like them so much. Dak Noob and Bug Papa seem to agree, arguing that LEGO is supposed to be all about imagination, and that these massive sets actually limit that. Nonetheless though, LEGO still releases plenty of Creator 3-in-1 sets and LEGO brick boxes that you can buy and be creative with. Now, this does bring me though to another hot conversation topic across LEGO forums and online regarding buying multiple sets. Do you ever buy a set just for the minifigures? Some fans will buy a set or even 2 copies of the set if it includes a lot of unique or interesting minifigures or pieces. And I'm not just talking about small $20 sets either. People will drop hundreds of dollars on a set just to get their hands on a few rare pieces when they maybe could have just bought them individually on Bricklink or eBay for a fraction of the cost. I will never understand these people. I mean, I've definitely bought sets for the minifigures, but never anything that might break the bank. What about you? What's the biggest set you've ever picked up for a single part or minifigure? I mean, people seem to obsess over minifigures. We've gotten so many over the years, but I've seen some ridiculous hot takes in this department. Perhaps the hottest take in today's video comes from PJC, who straight up just says what might be considered blasphemy to many LEGO fans. I don't really care about minifigs. This user doesn't elaborate on this point, but the comment did receive more than 350 upvotes, so it's clearly a position that at least some people agree with. Another user, though, had a slightly different complaint about minifigures, claiming that they need knees. Now, I've personally never considered the possibility of minifigures having bendable knees, but it's definitely an interesting concept as long as these new figures don't look like the Galidor figures. Yuck. I mean, no one can argue that more posability is a bad thing, but there is one big issue with this idea: scale. If LEGO decided to make minifigures with bendable legs, they would almost certainly need to be a bit larger. In fact, LEGO has done this before with its Technic figures back in the day. These guys have bendable knees and elbows and are definitely much more versatile than the standard LEGO minifigure, but seeing them side by side, it becomes very apparent that the two just simply are not compatible at all. Designing a set such as the Daily Bugle in this scale would be ridiculous. Now, in a video all about controversy and different opinions, there's one claim that rises above the rest. Okay, so when asked about their controversial LEGO opinion, a Reddit user with the brilliant username OKSureWhyNot gave the hottest take I've ever seen when they answered, "They taste amazing." And I have to agree. Personally, I'm a big fan of the red ones, but brittle brown pieces just melt in your mouth. I'm just kidding. Please don't taste your LEGO bricks. They're not very flavorful nor nutritious. But one comment that I do agree with comes from an anonymous user who claims that the failure of the hidden side and video lines was people's unwillingness to engage with the companion apps. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again, hidden side was an amazing and underrated theme that really didn't get the love that it deserved when it came out. And while it's impossible to know exactly why it flopped, I really do think that advertising the theme as, quote, multimedia was something of a mistake. LEGO has almost always been a purely analog toy, and many fans are drawn to it for exactly this reason. I mean, personally, I don't even like using the digital instructions for builds. To me, the pure simplicity of plastic bricks is the main selling point, and telling me that these sets are meant to be used alongside my smartphone was not super appealing to me. Now, technically, these sets did not require you to use the apps at all, but the marketing was all over the packaging and probably confused a fair number of people. Although many beloved themes are retired too soon, some of LEGO's most successful lines are equally as controversial. Captain Rip created a pretty heated conversation on Reddit when they said that they simply didn't care for brickheads at all. Okay, I do understand where they're coming from here. Let's be honest, brickheads are literally just buildable Funko Pops, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're one of the millions of people who enjoy collecting those figures, then building your own seems like a great idea. With more than 200 different brickhead sets out there to pick from nowadays, there's sure to be something for everyone, which is why they've stuck around for so long. They're surprisingly affordable too, and cover a lot of amazing characters, making them great gifts or as a fun impulse purchase. I personally have a handful of these sets, but it's also pretty easy to see them as quite bland, boring, and quite repetitive once you buy a few. What are your opinions on brickheads? Another hot take is from DDK_soda, who says that LEGO art sets are just lazy cash grabs with no creativity whatsoever. Now, these sets are kind of all over the place in terms of design, but I personally really like the Starry Night and Great Wave sets. But I can see DDK's point. LEGO basically took a famous piece of art, copied it with LEGO bricks, and is now selling it for quite a hefty price. However, others may view this as LEGO praising and recognizing the creativity of famous artists. But then again, there are also art sets like the various mosaic sets, and also the world map, which is technically LEGO's largest set ever made with more than 11,000 pieces. However, they're almost entirely all 1x1 round studs, which leads to a truly finger-busting process while providing nothing in the way of clever or unique building techniques. At least it looks quite good hung up on a wall. But this ties in closely with another debate that's been raging online for years: play or display. LEGO is first and foremost a toy, there's really no arguing that, but just because something is a toy doesn't mean that it can't also be an amazing display piece. The LEGO Botanicals theme is one of my personal favorites for its fun parts usage and beautiful final builds, but it really has absolutely zero playability. Overall, no one is arguing that sets like this shouldn't exist, just that there are maybe too many of them in general, especially among the larger sets. While there's a bit of truth to this, as sets such as the massive Eiffel Tower don't really have any play features, there are plenty of larger sets that make great toys, such as the Ninjago City sets, the Daily Bugle, and many of the larger Star Wars ships. At the end of the day though, LEGO does really make something for everyone, and if you don't want to display the sets, there's surely something for you in LEGO's catalog. A user going by the Great Possum on Reddit made an incredibly bold claim when they stated that Monkey Kid is better than Star Wars. Now, that's a very polarizing claim by any measure, and they didn't provide a lot of further context, but I can kind of understand where they're coming from. To many people, LEGO and Star Wars are so deeply connected that no brick separator could get them apart. As the first licensed theme, Star Wars has played a massive role in LEGO's vast success, but of course, not all Star Wars sets are great, unless you just absolutely love gray LEGO bricks. While sets like the UCS Venator and Star Destroyer are genuinely impressive builds, at the end of the day, it's just another big gray spaceship. Not to mention the annoying repetition at times. I mean, how many times has LEGO released an X-Wing? Yeah, a lot. Sure, these sets are for die-hard Star Wars fans, but you can't deny that LEGO is desperately scratching the bottom of the barrel. On the other hand, Monkey Kid fully encapsulates the idea of creativity with bright, playful, vibrant, and incredibly unique sets. It's an original theme created by LEGO, so there's a lot of experimentation in the sets, which is quite refreshing. Just look at the Monkey King's Ultra Mech, for example. This thing is bright, colorful, and just looks so cool. The entire line is like this, stunningly designed sets that are good for play or display. To me, it resembles a lot of the aspects that helped Ninjago turn into an evergreen theme for LEGO, and I wouldn't be surprised if Monkey Kid has a bit of staying power. But it seems like the Star Wars hate doesn't end there, because another user named OctopusFacts2 made their opinions crystal clear when they stated that, quote, "the only cool armies are castle ones." This was in direct response to a wider conversation on clone trooper armies, so I think it's safe to say that they're not a fan. Now, personally, I don't have a large army of either, so let's examine both sides. While castle armies are certainly impressive and have decades worth of factions, settings, and accessories to pull from, there's just no competing with the real size, scale, and availability of some Star Wars armies out there. While having thousands of identical stormtroopers is admittedly a bit boring, there are a lot of versions of these minifigures, so variation is possible. However, armies of LEGO Castle minifigures include knights in full armor and horses, which is pretty epic. Would you rather have a huge army of troopers or castle figures? Let me know in the comments, and while you're down there, tap that like button. However, there's another big theme that many LEGO builders seem to have mixed feelings about. Two fans left comments on my previous LEGO Hot Takes video that pretty clearly made their point. PolarBear9946 was polite when they said that they, quote, "don't really care about Ninjago. While they do admit that the line has some impressive sets, particularly the dragons, they just don't care for the line overall." Another user named Maria was a bit more abrupt in their assessment, simply stating that, quote, "Ninjago sucks." Honestly, I think that's a bit too harsh. If you had bought the 2012 Ninjago sets, you would have instantly become a Ninjago fan. Plus, you could have gotten an original Spitta minifigure at that time. This theme has been around for more than a decade at this point and has garnered a ton of fans, from large temples to dragons, mechs, and incredible minifigures. I guarantee that Ninjago has something for everyone. But regardless of your feelings on Star Wars, Ninjago, or any other theme, one Reddit user made a point that I think we can all partially agree with. According to Kingpin, quote, "I have no interest in Star Wars and Harry Potter, and I wish I could hide them on the LEGO site so I don't have to see them." Now, this is actually an interesting concept, in my opinion. There are so many LEGO themes these days. I think we all have a theme or two that we simply just have no interest in, but still want to see all the other themes and new sets. Although you can sort by individual theme on LEGO's website, you can only do one at a time. The ability to just hide all sets from a single line would be really nice. Get on it, LEGO. What might be the hottest take in today's video comes from two different people. Two viewers, SoloWing88 and Chef Deadpool8481, posted comments on my last video with the same overall opinion. Mega Construx is better than LEGO. Yikes, I don't think I agree with this one, but let's hear them out. Chef Deadpool claims that Mega has better themes, with brands like Halo, Pokemon, Hot Wheels, and Barbie. Those are undeniably huge names in the toy world, and it's no surprise that Mattel kept those licenses to themselves. I do have to admit though that some of these sets do look quite nice. The Pokemon builds in particular would likely be a smash hit if LEGO ever made them. SoloWing though praised the Mega Construx figures over LEGO minifigures for their posability and larger size. Now, sure, these figures are bigger, and they do have more points of articulation. The Halo figures especially also perfectly capture the look of the games, but to me, there's something about them that just feels off. I can't really put it into words, but these things are kind of sitting in an uncanny valley. They're certainly more like action figures than minifigures. Additionally though, Mega Bloks and Mega Construx have had a long reputation for being, quote, cheap knockoffs. I remember getting some of their earlier sets as a kid and being pretty disappointed with them overall. Granted, that was a pretty long time ago and I haven't touched any since, but have they gotten any better? Let me know in the comments. Now, another super hot take that I came across while writing this video comes from a viewer here named Smelty Boy, who claims that LEGO melts too easily, making it difficult to build in the desert. Now, I do live in the southern United States, but I've never heard of LEGO bricks melting in open air. Regardless, I do know that LEGO tells you not to put them in the dishwasher as that can melt them, but just sitting on a shelf? That got me wondering, just how durable are LEGO bricks? Well, it turns out that LEGO bricks melt at temperatures around 220 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 105 degrees Celsius, or just above the boiling point of water. Seeing as how the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth was only 134 Fahrenheit, I have some questions about where this person is storing their LEGO. In a black car sitting in the sun on asphalt? Who knows? The same viewer followed up, though, with an even weirder issue. They claim that LEGO bricks are actually too small and that Duplo is better. While I'm 99% sure this was a joke, it did get me thinking. Would you like to see Duplo bricks as part of a mainline LEGO set? I have to admit it's an interesting concept, though one which I'm pretty sure fans might take an issue with. Next up is user Hubber Bubbler over on Reddit, who argues that any molded piece bigger than a horse is too big, looks like Duplo, and should just be brick built. I have to say that I'm of two minds about this one. While LEGO has released some incredible brick-built animals in the past, they've also released some truly terrible versions. Honestly, which of these two would you rather have in a LEGO set? While I do have to admit that the molded dinosaur does look a bit out of place in a LEGO set and that the brick-built one is far more customizable, I do like the giant molded dino pieces for some reason. Large pieces are nothing new to LEGO sets though. Going all the way back to 2001 and the initial release of the now legendary Bionicle line, the sets were also a huge departure from what many fans have grown accustomed to, as they made heavy use of Technic elements and several brand new molded pieces. While today many of these sets can fetch a pretty penny online and countless fans clamor for the triumphant return of this long-lost series, these feelings aren't universal. Many Bionicle fans fear that any reboot wouldn't be able to capture the charm and creativity of the original, and would be a disappointment to fans. And there's actually some good reasoning behind this, as the line was rebooted in 2015 for a full 2 years before inevitably being retired once again, and we also got this random promotional set in 2023. Now, although more and more LEGO builds have been incorporating Technic pieces over the last several years, this hasn't made everyone happy. A viewer named Sans7342 laid out their hot takes clearly and stated that Technic sets are horrible to build. Why? Well, LEGO sets are supposed to be fun, and Technic sets apparently are not that fun to this viewer. What's fun is always a matter of preference, but I can sort of understand where they're coming from. The way that Technic sets get put together is just so different from what many people think when they hear LEGO, and many of them don't really feature standard LEGO bricks. Also, if you're not really into cars, planes, or heavy machinery, there isn't a lot that the Technic line has to offer. Personally, I don't have many Technic sets myself, but I'm looking forward to the new Technic space sets coming out later this year. It's nice to finally see LEGO branching out in this line. Now, this same user, Sans, also defends LEGO themes like Mario and Hidden Side that use an app, claiming that they don't deserve the hate. Now, I touched on this a bit in the last Hot Takes video, and I generally agree here. The problem with these sets wasn't the sets themselves, it was just the lack of explanation of the technology and some weird marketing efforts by LEGO. Regardless of your thoughts on smartphone-connected LEGO sets, it does seem like the trend is here to stay, at least for now. But there is an entire other category of hot takes. What do you think is the right way for a minifigure to hold something? For example, which way should the hands point when giving a minifigure an accessory? According to every LEGO instruction booklet that I've ever used, the answer is to keep the flat part of the hand on top, as this keeps whatever the minifigure is holding pointing straight up. And okay, let's just assume that we all agree on that standard position for the hand. But it doesn't solve every argument. One that has raged online for years is the proper way to hold a Star Wars lightsaber. According to all the official images that I've found, option 2 is, quote, the right way, but that hasn't stopped many builders from taking matters into their own hands and flipping it around. A similar issue is all about Ninjago katanas, namely which way is up. Again, LEGO tells us one thing very clearly: the katana edges face the ground. That's the way it is in every official image, and in my opinion, it's the more logical and visually appealing way to store them. I mean, we all know to hold anything sharp pointing downwards, so why would these be any different? But on the topic of LEGO katanas though, do you prefer the ones with the round hand guards or the square ones? Apparently many fans have strong opinions on this. But there's still one topic that is so controversial that LEGO has even pulled sets from store shelves over it. Should LEGO make military-themed sets? The reality is far more complicated than that. Click this video right now to learn the truth behind LEGO's surprising and controversial past, and be sure to subscribe for more LEGO videos.